All right, you guys, welcome. It is July 3rd. We have a holiday trading session here today. So watch out. We do have an early close today. We're going to be closing at 1 o'clock Central or Eastern, and this is, of course, noon Central Time. So a little bit of an early close. We had a beautiful momentum reversal here just a second ago on some of the smaller time frames on the NQ. We'll take a look at that in a second. We're going to do a little bit of a briefer session here today so you guys can get out and get started on your vacation. I don't know if have any exciting plans here with coronavirus or whatnot, but we'll wrap it up early anyways. So if you guys have any trades you need to manage here into the close. All right, so let's flip on over here. I've got some questions in some messages, and that's what we're going to start with here. So we'll take a look at those here to begin with. I'm going to pull up. We have a question on the pound kiwi here. So we're looking at outlook on this currency pair. And as you can see, we've been in a range here for quite a while, a good couple of years here. And it's not the easiest type of market to trade in. We've got a lot of back and forth action. The main thing that I want to draw your attention to right now is that the momentum of this breakdown. How does this momentum compare to some of the previous moves where we had these stronger impulse waves? We've been talking about impulse waves all week this week in League of Traders. So what you'll notice is that we're pretty much at a level where we've seen a number of moves happen in the past. It's a little bit more than some of the smaller moves, and it's a little bit less than some of the bigger moves. The bigger moves tend to have some stronger momentum to them. So not really, great for comparison. We don't have a ton to compare just because of how much time we're looking back at here, but we are at levels where it could be harder to keep going. Not necessarily, but it is something that we want to be more cautious of. Let's drop down and look at the daily charts. So here's the daily, and what we can see here on the daily is that we had this big 1, 2, 3 here, kind of in the middle of this pull, and then momentum is shifting here. Now, with the way this is forming, it's almost like a megaphone, but it's not quite because we didn't have that slightly lower low over here. Let me kind of put that on here. We didn't have a slightly lower low here, so we don't have a full megaphone. If it was a full megaphone, we're at a spot where this could go and do a measured move again to get lower. Okay, so we are at a level where we might see some sort of tilted continuation type of move, but I really don't want to get too excited about that right now. It's at one of those do or die points, is definitely an iffier spot for new trades. If you're already in, the main thing that I would watch for is if this comes up, pops up here, comes back down. Let me kind of slide this on over, make it easier to see it. So if this uses this channel here and we get a pop and then it goes to a slightly lower low here and then breaks that channel again to the upside, that's what would tend to turn this around more with the way this is forming right now. So that would be the main risk that I would watch for the bears, is any sort of pop that breaks this sort of pointed ballet toe here, goes to a slightly lower low, creates that trap. Basically, it's a momentum reversal plus pattern. And then that can get it charged back around pretty easily. So I think that is the main thing that I would be watching here at this point. I do think it's a possibility with where we are at right now, especially when we're looking at, this overall channel here as potential for a larger megaphone. But I do think that we have room for some lower lows as we go into August 1st. It just might give you that rapid pop up there first before it tries to do that. All right, now let's look at some of the other markets. You guys have any questions, post them in the room here because we're going to be doing a shorter session today. So we're going to just kind of cover some of your main questions. So setup we just had here on the NASDAQ. This is a momentum reversal. So it's a good example of that kind of ballet slipper here. Good resistance at this level up here, and momentum is starting to shift at that zone. So this is an example of a pretty strong reversal type of strategy. I'm going to kind of drop this down here so you guys can see the details a little bit better. So what I was watching was the fact that things were shifting here and we were coming into that previous low zone over there, and then we had kind of a false first high here. So the highs aren't evenly spaced up here. And I'm going to get that template put into the member section for you guys too. I don't have it in there quite yet, but you have the even spacing here. And so this triggered a 2T reversal, and that's what we're looking at right here. And this was the main target that hits a good 90% of the time there, which is just, basically where this momentum starts to shift. I do think we have room for this to try to go lower again. So kind of watching this for avalanche potential here at this point. You could call it a scary ghost if you want to. Doesn't quite have as much of the arm over here, but it kind of is trying. So watching for that as we head into kind of the end of the session. But there's not really a lot of time left, you guys. So be more cautious with that. We only have about 50 minutes here left on the day. On the larger time frames, let's take a look at our larger chart. So we basically have that same pattern kind of trying to form here on the weekly time frame. You can see where it had that rapid move, and then we're getting these shifting moves here. So we talked about this a little bit last week, but the main risk now is that we have the same or similar type of pattern happening on the daily charts that we just are seeing playing out on that intraday chart there. So watching for potential to get flushes. Again, when we're looking at the spacing here, this could be a false first high right here, and then we could still get another after this point because the spacing just isn't quite even yet. See how it's tighter here between the last two highs and then the first two. So if we go back to that 50 tick, you can kind of see the same thing here and then here. So that went to that extra high right there. So that's the main risk that we've got as far as the bears go. They're going to probably keep trying to chop them up here. So be on the more cautious side at this moment with this stuff. Don't get too excited here because good chance you're going to end up trapped with it if you're not careful. So that's what we're looking at on the larger time frames. Here, as we were going into yesterday's session, actually the night before, you guys that are in the forum, you recall, I was looking for this channel to lead to a correction here into yesterday's session. And the reason for that was not only did we have the bigger measured impulse waves going on here, but we also had the market really holding that uptrend for a good 3 days where it wasn't breaking key support levels. It was holding the trend channel for 3 days. That is very difficult to maintain. So usually by the end of day 3, going into day 4, and I would say almost 100% of the time, I have seen a couple of exceptions over the years, but nearly 100% of the time, that is going to try to break that trend channel. It doesn't necessarily lead to a price correction, but it does lead to at least a time correction. And that is what we've been seeing so far. It's been predominantly a time correction. To some extent, we have a price correction, of course, as well. You can see we had 2 corrections over here in that uptrend on the 60-minute charts, 1 and 2, about the same amount of time. And then this kind of led to a 1, 2, 3 up here. And that pushed it and finished that bigger correction. So what we're getting now is a break in that trend channel. So we're going to be seeing, this trying to really give us some continuation of this correction here. Now we are at a spot where at this point there's a possibility of things like 2Ts happening, stuff like that, that could try to push it a little bit higher on this time frame. We've got a break of that channel. Kind of move this here so you guys can see the channel on the 60-minute chart here. So see how I hook that up there with that low, and then this pulls it through that channel. On the tick charts, it broke it earlier. So on the tick charts, we actually had an earlier break of this than we see here on the time frame charts. But that is a really, really good rule of thumb, you guys. So if you see something going on 2.5 days and you're looking at that, you've got to really be careful when you're looking at upside stuff, because it's going to be so much easier for it to try to go and put in a bigger correction at that point. And that's what we're seeing here going on over the last couple of days now. Right now, that smaller time frame is trying to give us a little baby check mark for an avalanche to try to continue this move down here. Here's our 30-second chart. Looks decent. It's a little possibly a little bit too early. You know, the volume is nice and dry. I'm a little concerned with trades here today just because we are a holiday, you know, going into the end of the session. Things can get light, and they can also then get more insane on the whippy side. So can be a little bit more dangerous with that lighter trading. So use some more caution on that right there. But overall, this is looking pretty decent. Hold on one second, you guys. I do still have part of my position from the momentum reversal, so I'm kind of watching this pretty closely here. Whenever we have support at these levels, we can always get a two-wave bounce, and given the end of the day, I don't really want to give it too much room on that. So I have a trailing stop above this high, and that is a bit more on the risky side as far as a trailing stop goes, because without that firm break of the low first, there's always the possibility that it could flush first and then go to the downside, especially when things are on the lighter side. So I do have a higher risk stop at that point. And I want you guys to be aware that that is the case. So typically, if you're looking for another wave down, you'd have to keep the high, your stop above this high until you get that break. But since we're at the end of the day, I don't want to deal with if it goes and tries to flush and pulls back down, because things can really go pretty fast there. So I'm not willing to take that risk. And that's a decision that you guys have to make. It's something that you need to know what the logical reason for keeping a wider stop is versus the conservative reason for not doing it. And in this case, I am taking the more conservative approach here at the end of our trading week. Let's go take a look at some of the other markets. What all would you guys like me to look at here? Gold. Okay, I'm gonna have to pull some charts from my other screen over here for gold. You got anything else you want me to look at? Please post that here too. I'm just going to throw up a couple of charts here in Telegram on gold, and then we'll come back and talk about them. And if you have some other things you want me to watch, go ahead or take a peek at, go ahead and post those here too. Main thing I'm watching on gold right now is the potential for it to form a megaphone intraday. And I'm just pulling up the last of my charts here, so we'll flip on over and take a look at those. So here's our bigger time frame on gold. And what you can see is that we're in this really, pretty decent trading range here, but look what led into the range. Really rapid move overall, but shifting momentum a little bit on that second portion of it. What that does is it makes an upside breakout really a lot more difficult. So even when it tries to break, a lot of times it will break like this and the channel will shift and it can lead to a pretty rapid correction again. So that's something that we're really risking right now, currently on gold on the larger time frame on the daily chart. We do have a measured move here, and then this triggered a 2T setup on the intraday charts. You can kind of see it over here. This is our 60-minute. So it had the breakout to the upside and then the shift over here. So we have a smaller 2T there that's part of a bigger 2T. And at this point, we've kind of pulled back a good third of this impulse move here. So this is at risk of a shallow avalanche at this point, which means this to this, and then it can flush to the downside here. Doesn't necessarily mean it can keep going. It might, flush and pop back up, but it is at that risk of doing that pattern here. Let me go and show you guys what's going on the tick charts. So here's the tick charts. And what I'm looking at here is the potential for this to do a megaphone here that would bring in more selling. So what we have is the potential for this to flush, but maybe it goes and tries a slightly higher high first because the distance between these highs and those lows pretty tight, especially with the two highs here close together. So it's not as clean of a megaphone for short as I like to see. It does risk doing a slightly higher high before trying to do a megaphone, but overall decent potential for that megaphone to try to form here as we go into next week. So that's kind of what I'm watching here on gold. Again, potential for a breakdown here into the end of the day, but again, light volume, you guys. I don't really want to get too excited about anything into the end of our session here. So just be more cautious here right now on this. We are mid-range. Let's look at OSTK. Put it up on one of these other charts here. You can see that now the stock is trying to flush here. It actually is flushing. OSTK is trying to do that shift here. So this is one of those again where we can get the flush. It could go up again and then turn around with a bigger move there. Did that take me out of NQ? Oh, absolutely, you guys. I was keeping it above the channel as it was moving. So I was filled at 10, let's me go look, 103.36 it looks like. And again, this is the risk here with the market the way it is. Let me show you what's going on here. And then we'll come back to that OSTK. So see this? this with the action here today, because we're on a holiday, a lot of times we can get those really big flushes. So I didn't want to keep the stop above this high because with really light volume, it could even go up, flush that, and then flip back around. So I don't know yet if that's what's going to happen here, but that's the main risk. Didn't want to take that risk on a day like today. So I left part of my trade on. It was only a third. Left part of it to see if it might go and do that breakdown because the range was forming pretty well. But the momentum on the downside here was pretty average. It wasn't stronger than average. So pretty average move. Can kind of look at this here. So you can see it was trying to do an avalanche, but it just couldn't do the confirmation. So I'm not going to take a less conservative approach on a holiday here. You rarely win fading me except on a holiday. Did you go long, Harvey, on that break? Yes, nice. Nice job. So see how it kind of just did like that tap out there and now it's trying to pull back in. It's pretty cool. It does this all the time when you have light volume. Let's see here. Back to our OSTK. Let's see where'd that go. I had pretty good gains already locked in there on that one too. I had used ATM at the start of it. So no biggie. All right, let's look at this OSTK here. So, the 60-minute, you guys, I'm this is something that I would usually kind of stay out of because see how we have this two-way move up into the second correction? We only really have one break here. I didn't know that this would be big enough. It's still in the range to call that the first move up. So I think you risk a slower continuation on this. So I would leave that alone as far as like new setups go. The daily definitely still has more room. Look at this on the daily here. So don't turn and flip this, basically, is what I'm saying. Don't fight this trend at this moment. So you've got your check mark right here. So conceivably, this could go and do a measured move there, and it's gone past the halfway point. So the halfway point, which is basically here, is the first main hurdle that thing has to break. And it couldn't do it, you guys. Or I mean, it did do it rather. So it couldn't pause there long enough to flip it around. It only paused long enough as here. So that upside still has more room to go. I would just leave it at this point. Intraday, just go look at some of the smaller time frames intraday here. So even though we're at a high intraday, we could correct. So like I said, this can do like a momentum reversal plus type of thing. It could even come in here again, just do kind of a little false break here to the downside, pop back up, and then come back in again, do a little bit more correction on the intraday charts, but ultimately end up still going higher. So definitely stay away there on that one. Let's see. Oil. Okay, go pull up a chart on oil for you guys. I closed my oil charts. Hold on. I have not been trading oil as much lately at all. I switched it over to the Russell on my trading computer because the Russell's been trading really nicely. Let's see here. Might take a second for it to load, you guys. What else do you want to look at? Got a couple more minutes. TDOC. I'll pull that TDOC up while I'm waiting on oil. So this was one that shows you how that steep move can go and flush back up, but this a lot of times it can even go up to here. So it's kind of interesting. It didn't do a full two-way flush, but it's a pattern that could have a 2T there. This is just a 100 tick chart, but it's the first one that pulled up. So it's an interesting one here to look at. On the dailies, that could definitely have some more room on the upside. Intraday still has some more room on the upside. So you have basically a 1, 2, 3, and it's kind of stalling here. So this might pop again. It could be a little slow. I wouldn't get into it as a new position, but I wouldn't fade it or reverse it here either. I think that if you're long, you still got more room. This is a pretty short correction compared to this upside move. So you always have the potential this could go and do another correction before it tries to go up again. So you might get something like that happening. And oil. Grab our oil charts. So oil was trying to do a 2T earlier last month, and it just could not do that next wave of confirmation on it. So a really good example of a 2T right here. It only made it to T2 though. So T2, when we're talking about a 2T pattern, let me kind of draw out this pattern. Next week in League of Traders, we're dealing with this pattern the entire week. So a 2T pattern is this. And the T1 target is the channel here. That hits almost all the time. T2 target, target 2. Oops, that's T1. Target 2 is here, and then target 3 is here. So this one hits about 95% of the time. This one hits about 90% of the time. So here is T2, and then here is T3. So it hit T2 very quickly, which usually means it has a pretty good shot of hitting T3. But it went and shifted momentum in here. And this kind of little double bottom shift right in there, it's kind of hard to see on the 240, but it's in there. That's held this up. So if you're short, that actually gives you a protective trailing stop there. And we do have the risk that this can go and do a momentum reversal off of the high, but it's not going to be pretty because it should have pulled back down into here before it went to the third high. So right now I'm kind of, I don't really have like a big bias on this at this moment. You know, this could go and do a pull up here. It could go and still come back down here. This is a lot more of a flip of a coin type of market in here. So I would basically just stay away. And I've been staying away here basically for a while, since, uh, gosh, it's been a while since I've done too much with oil. But yeah, I don't really see anything right now. Why was the bounce from the double tap? Was the bounce from the double tap too strong? Yeah. So we actually talked about this in League of Traders. I think it was last week. When you've got a move that comes into a low and it does this kind of V and holds that low, and this pivot is really strong, that has a better chance of holding, and that's what we're seeing happening here. So that can go and gain momentum off of that kind of little double tap zone in there. And that's what's happening. So want to kind of leave that alone here. All right, you guys. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here today. We didn't have, a long session, but I've got some stuff I need to take care of here ahead of the close. So when I get out and go and check over some of my longer positions here. So, you guys, Nicole is trying to hunt down Jerry, or Jerry's trying to hunt down Nicole rather. So if you're in here, Nicole, go hunt down Jerry. And everyone have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you back here next week. All of the League of Trader sessions are in the members area. Go back and review them, you guys. And I'll have this one up here soon as well. All right, take care, everyone.